What is going on, Cosmic Crew? Thanks for stopping by the channel today. We have a lot of news about Spider-Man Brand New Day, including some coming from the director himself, Destin Daniel Cretton. And we've heard a lot about Spider-Man Brand New Day recently as far as the tone is concerned. It's reportedly going to be a lot darker and a lot more emotional than the previous Spider-Man, which is very interesting because Spider-Man No Way Home was pretty dang emotional, but even director Destin Daniel Cretton said this about Tom Holland's performance in Spider-Man Brand New Day. He stated, "I am really excited for everybody to see Tom Holland in this movie because he killed it. His performance is incredible. He went to places that I think people and fans and just anybody who watches the movie, I think will feel very connected to the emotions that we're exploring." Now, we have heard again that this is going to be pretty emotional, and we do have a plot leak that summarizes basically all of the leaks that we have heard so far and puts them together in what seems to be a pretty accurate description of what the movie is going to be like that we're about to go over. And we're all waiting for that trailer still. I know we have heard recently that Sony has actually been pretty indecisive about when to release the trailer. Some say it could drop any day, in which it could. If Sony decides to just drop it tomorrow, they could, but we're also hearing they are targeting the week of the Super Bowl, not the Super Bowl itself, which I think would be a good idea, not to compete with Avengers Doomsday, because as much as I love Spider-Man, I think the Avengers Doomsday trailer would be the more successful trailer. So eyeing the Super Bowl week makes sense. Get ahead of the hype, or releasing it after also makes sense to basically ride the hype train of Avengers Doomsday. Both, though, are heavily anticipated movies that I think just everybody is waiting for, both full official trailers. So let's go into this plot leak. It's very interesting because, like I said, it lines up with a lot of the reports that we've been hearing so far about Spider-Man Brand New Day. It does have a lot of new things, of course, that we're going to talk about, but I actually feel like, based on the leak trailer that I have seen, and what we're hearing about the new-ish trailer, because they mixed it up a little bit because the trailer got leaked before, it seems like this is pretty much the plot of the movie, with the exception of a few things that haven't been confirmed yet. But let's dive into it. So the movie starts in a deep, dark depression post No Way Home ending, which, I mean, just makes sense. If we think about the ending of No Way Home, it was pretty dark. Everybody forgot who Peter Parker was. He lost everybody in that movie, with the exception of before, because he lost Tony Stark before, but in that movie, he lost everyone. Aunt May died, so she's not coming back. Happy doesn't remember who he is, and Zendaya, her MJ, his girlfriend, doesn't know who he is either. And apparently that's a big part of this movie, and of course Ned. But it says Peter has lost everything. Aunt May, MJ, Ned, like I just said, he feels like a ghost. He reads a letter to MJ, realizing she is better off without him. I think this is him writing the letter and reading it to himself, not to her. It says reads a letter to MJ, but I think what that means is he reads the letter that he wrote that he was going to give her and decides not to, basically like at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home. So it says the same logic applies to Ned. He avoids contacting both to prevent danger. This isn't a fun high school adventure. It's a psychological character study, which, based on everything we heard, yeah, there's going to be a lot of psychological aspects with Spider-Man in this movie. So it says that he seeks her out, but he finds that she is with Harry Osborn. Now, we've heard rumors about this, and I really hope it's true. I really hope it's time to introduce Harry Osborn, Norman Osborn. It would be really interesting because we've already had the Green Goblin Norman Osborn in the MCU, but he was from a different universe. So the dynamic between Harry and Peter is already a little weird due to that fact. But I guess Peter doesn't have any reason to believe that Harry would be evil in any type of way, in which when we first meet him, he probably shouldn't be. It's the events that take place that turn him evil. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But I think it's time to introduce the Osborns into the MCU and Oscorp as well. So Peter accepts that his place has been taken by Harry. He is no longer MJ's boyfriend. She has no idea who he is. And she has a new boyfriend. She has moved on, which, you know, if you forget you were ever with somebody, it's pretty easy to move on, I guess. Can't really blame her. But he embraces a new beginning. A painful yet hopeful brand new day begins, which there's your title. The movie tackles heavy topics like loneliness and isolation. Peter sees being Spider-Man as a curse, not a gift. That's a classic storyline for Spider-Man that we've seen on screen before. We've seen it with Tobey. Interspersed with action showing Peter copying mid-tier villains. We've heard about basically the montage in the beginning where it seems like he does move on and he kind of puts Peter Parker aside and just focuses on being Spider-Man. That's going to be a big part of this film as well, is he is kind of pushing Peter to the side and neglecting what Peter wants, and just focusing on being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And that's going to come back to kind of bite him in the butt. It says the public loves Spider-Man, but the authorities are strictly against him. And I'm sure when they say the public, they're not talking about JJJ, because as we know, he is not going to like him. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because we know Tremel Tillman is in this movie. We have not heard anything about who he could be. We've heard theories like, hey, maybe he's Norman Osborn. That would be kind of interesting. But this says something different. The Department of Damage Control, the DODC, is an independent group post Tony Stark, led by Tremel Tillman. They see Spider-Man as an unregulated threat. So Tremel Tillman could be the leader of the DODC. Now, we just saw the DODC in Wonder Man, but we also saw that there was people higher up than the people that we saw at the DODC in Wonder Man. So he could be the higher up. We don't know who he's playing. We don't know his name yet. And this just says Tremel Tillman is playing the head. But it makes sense that the DODC is going to be somewhat of a villain, because they were made to be pretty much kind of a villainous organization in Wonder Man, if you watched it. Because Wonder Man didn't really do anything wrong, but they wanted him. They want him in custody just because he has powers. And that's, of course, as we talked about, going to be a big thing moving forward in the MCU, especially with the mutants. So mid-montage, so this is going to be as Spider-Man is fighting a bunch of different villains, Peter's powers begin to glitch due to stress and depression. His body reaches final mutation stage as his anger rises and pain starts to increase. And basically, he turns into a version of Man-Spider eventually. Now, we've heard conflicting reports about this. It all seems to kind of point to some type of mutation that Peter Parker is having. His webbing becomes organic. Some insiders say he's not really going to grow any new limbs. Some say he is. Some say it's full Man-Spider. Some say it's not full Man-Spider. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I do also want to add, we've heard a lot lately that Sony is finally playing nice with Marvel, and I think the fact that we're going to get so many villains in this movie is just proof to that. There's so many villains, whereas before, yeah, Sony was being a real stickler about this. They wanted to do their own things, right? Like they wanted their own Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man. It didn't make any sense. It didn't work, but it's what they wanted. Now it seems like they've stopped. They've accepted they're not doing it on their own, and they're kind of just giving Marvel what they want at this point in time. They want to have input on the movies, but they can use the characters now. And we'll talk more about that in future videos. But this talks about Sadie Sink playing Jean Grey. That's what basically everybody is saying at this point in time. And I really think, honestly, anything less than this might be kind of underwhelming, unless it's like Mayday Parker or Spider-Gwen. It just really depends. Like, if she's someone like Shathra, I don't think that would be really exciting for people. And I think at this point in time, Marvel and Sony might have wanted to control the rumor a little bit. If she was playing Shathra, they might want to be like saying who she is or something to lower expectations. So I really do think she is Jean Grey at this point in time. Mutants are on the run. Jean Grey is a walking nuclear bomb threat in the eyes of the DODC, right? Because of her powers. But according to reports, she hasn't reached her full potential, right? She's not Phoenix Force Jean. She's a young Jean. She hasn't met Professor Xavier yet. At least we don't think she has. Who knows what's going on with the mutants in the MCU right now. But as far as we're concerned, the X-Men do not exist. Professor X is not in our universe, and that's where we get the reboot. After Secret Wars, all these universes combine, and then we have the mutants in the MCU. So they're going to be limited powers. She's not going to be just full force Jean Grey with the Phoenix Force, but she encounters Peter Parker and things get tense. They're not friendly. And the Punisher appears as Jean's protector. So if Spider-Man views Jean as an enemy, then yeah, he's going to try and stop her, just like he's going to try to stop all these other villains that are in this movie in this big montage. But the Punisher shows up as Jean's protector and protects her. from Spider-Man. But what we're hearing is that the main villain is going to be Tombstone. And he has the Hand. He is behind the Hand organization, and he has a bunch of ninjas basically with him. He acts as a businessman destabilizing New York City for protection money. The Hand attacks and breaks out Scorpion from prison, which we already know is true. Spider-Man intervenes. The Punisher joins with a tank, but the convoy crashes. The DODC blames Spider-Man despite his efforts, and the Hand, or Tombstone's organization basically, goes after Spider-Man. All lining up with leaked photos, leaked videos, reports, all that we've heard so far makes sense. So basically at the end, stress and pain and everything just stresses Peter out to the point where he reaches that final stage. And it says he turns into Man Spider. He has a monstrous look. He kind of loses control, and he starts attacking his friends. He attacks the Punisher, Jean Grey, and Grey Hulk, which, like, think about that scene for a second. Think about those names that I just said. The Punisher, Jean Grey, Grey Hulk versus Spider-Man. That would be pretty dang cool. Ultimately, it says it's just complete chaos, but ultimately, Jean Grey gets inside of his head and calms him down with her psychic powers. Basically, what he realizes, that Jean helps him realize, is that he can't just ignore Peter Parker. He can't ignore what Peter Parker wants and just be Spider-Man, just helping other people. He has to help himself as well. Which, yeah, makes sense and helps him return to his normal form. And eventually Bruce Banner creates an antidote that fixes the mutation. And in the leaked trailer, we actually did hear Peter Parker going up to Professor Banner, because apparently he's a professor now. So this makes sense. He goes to Bruce for help, and over time, throughout the movie that is, Bruce Banner ultimately creates a serum for him. How Bruce turns into Grey Hulk, that has not yet been mentioned, but if perhaps he runs into Jean Grey, perhaps she gets inside of his mind, and that's how he hulks out again. I don't know, but I'm ready for a Savage Hulk again. That's all I know. And it says that Jean leaves, but hints at a future return. Now, Deadline's already confirmed she's going to be in Avengers Secret Wars, which makes, again, if she was like Shathra, that doesn't really make sense. That's not that big of enough character to appear in Secret Wars in any role that's meaningful. But Jean Grey, that's a good one. That's a really good one. And ultimately, Peter realizes that running from his life as Peter Parker is futile, and he has to be both people. He has to be Peter Parker. He has to take care of Peter Parker, but he also has to be Spider-Man, because with great power comes great responsibility. Like Aunt May said in the MCU. Not Uncle Ben, Aunt May. But the post-credit scene is what we've heard before. It's Tombstone getting a vial that has the Venom symbiote in it, which we've heard that from a couple of different insiders now. And I really hope that's the case. Again, Sony seems to be playing nice with Marvel at this point in time. So Venom in the MCU, especially because even before, it seemed to be what they were setting up with those post-credit scenes for Venom Let There Be Carnage and Spider-Man No Way Home. They kind of slapped us in the face by not really doing it, but it looks like now a new Venom, not Tom Hardy's Venom, but a new Venom is going to come in the MCU. The symbiote gets a new host, probably the Eddie Brock from the 616 universe, or whatever the new universe is going to be deemed. So a new Eddie Brock and a new Venom are probably on their way. Ultimately, I do think Spider-Man gets the symbiote, and ultimately, I actually think we're heading towards a Sinister Six movie. That's what I really think we're heading towards here. But overall, I actually really like this. I would love that kind of the final battle to be Spider-Man versus all these people. Tombstone being a villain, the DODC being a villain is really, really cool. But that final battle, again, just think of those characters I mentioned, that this mentions. I don't know, man. That could be a really, really cool fight scene. And it's not like Spider-Man's the villain, but in a way, when he loses control, he's going to be a pretty big threat. So I think that would be a pretty killer scene. If this is a movie we get, I like it. And it does involve a lot of emotion. And I do think, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I think MJ and Peter eventually get back together and she remembers who he is after Secret Wars, after the reset. But go ahead, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest Spider-Man news and, of course, Avengers Doomsday and Marvel news in general. And you can also find us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.